That is why this place is very special. This talk is a homage to all of these things and a hope that with this talk we can begin a tradition to make in Priol, to revive in Priol, an intellectual life that is so central to this home. So from Priol, for Goa, I hope we will have a Swaraj in ideas. I would also like to place on record my appreciation to Zag, the intellectual carrier of this idea, for organizing the talk here, to Asavari and Aditi for making it happen. I am honored being asked to give this talk, to pay my homage to my dear colleague Madhavi, friend and critical interlocutor, who enriched my world of ideas with her brilliant scholarship across many languages. And I'm grateful to all of you for coming to, in a sense, making this pilgrimage to Priol. For that is what I hope it will become over the years, an annual pilgrimage from which the ideas for Swaraj will emerge. Now for my talk. The title may have intrigued you, but I hope as I deliver it, you will begin to see why I have talked of the politics of words, in a sense of homage to Madhavi and Ravindra Bhatt, and languages and regimes of control. Please bear with me for giving this talk in English, because that's the only language in which I professionally practice. So I'm sorry I couldn't do it in Konkani, but I'll try. There is a considered viewpoint among scholars in Goa of Goa's liberation that the Portuguese colonial regime was more worried about the radio broadcasts of the Voice of Freedom than they were about the resistance politics of the Indian National Congress Goa or of Azad Gomantak Dal. The latter, Azad Gomantak Dal and Indian National Congress Goa, they could deal with through the coercive instruments of the state of power: arrest, imprisonment, torture, and banishment to far-flung colonies such as Angola. But for the former, a radio broadcast, it was too elusive. Physical beings can be managed physically, but words escape into the ether. They are both material, they're powerful, and yet they're immaterial, you can't hold them. How does one coddle and imprison a broadcast? How does one coddle and imprison a broadcast from the jungles or the Western Ghats, from Amboli, and sometimes from Castle Rock, or mostly from Castle Rock and sometimes from Amboli? How can one coddle words over which one has no control? The Portuguese were worried because they carefully constructed veil of censorship that covered the whole of Goa and kept the population in blissful ignorance about the wider world because of the censorship, was being breached by the broadcasts. Details of freedom movements in Africa, especially Portuguese Africa, of other colonies, were being broadcast by the radio. The radio also broadcast SSC results, I'm told. So that people in Goa developed as a kind of loyal listening community. The words emanating from the Voice of Goa became instruments of resistance against the regime of censorship that had been imposed. On 19th December 1961, a voice from the sky, not from God, but of Madhavi Sardesai, announced to the people of Goa that they were free. From an Indian aircraft, a broadcast gave the people of Goa this joyous news. Now, the Portuguese method of subjugation, of censorship, is one of the oldest methods of control by regimes wanting to manage oppressed populations. As a tool, censorship remains part of the toolkit of regimes. Toolkit is a word you all have heard about recently. Censorship remains part of the toolkit of regimes wanting to control. Even in India. The system of power, however, today in 2025, has additional strategies of mind control. At the heart of these strategies of controlling minds is language. I shall, in this brief lecture, discuss two of these strategies of mind control. The first is the control of the academic discourse, where the asymmetry of power is between the global north, the Western world, and the global south, us. The second strategy that I will discuss is the control of public discourse, where control is by the regime of the people. So censorship was one form of control. Control through language is another, of the regime, by the regime of the people. Now, academic discourse is the public discourse, but I will treat it as analytically separate because I want you to understand the distinctiveness of the strategy. At the outset, let me state my intention. This is a slightly technical thing, but I want all of us to appreciate it, and I think it is accessible. Let me state my intention here because I want to show the audience that there is a relationship between words, mind control, and the perception of reality. When you perceive reality through words, you begin to see the reality what those words convey. Perception of reality, both natural and social, takes place primarily through language. It is language that is the lens through which we see the world. For example, in Konkani, we have many words for the different way it rains. Words such as paus. No. Can't say it, I will say it properly. Thembeta, Kosalta, Pidjanta, Shivarta. Now imagine anyone who is not part of the Konkani language community. This will make no sense. English doesn't have such a range of words, just for rain. Asavari, like Madhavi, introduced me to this. We even have Makadache Paus. London, what is this Makadache Paus? Where it's sunny and it is raining at the same time. Now, those belonging to the Konkani language community who may have lived in the Konkan for at least some part of their lives can, as a result, sitting in New York, think about the monsoon. This would not be available to people who are not part of this language community. Language emerges in an ecosystem that enables the language community to take that understanding, that view of the world, to other places. The nuances of the Goan monsoon come to us through language. We can all smell the earth from the first rain. This relationship between the word and the world has engaged philosophers for many centuries. I'm not the first one to say it, and I'm not going to be the last. It's an old relationship. It's a very complex relationship. Philosophers have been debating what is the relationship between the word and the world. For example, they ask the question, does the word make the world? Does the word give us accessibility to the world? We take it for granted that we can see the coconut tree, we can see the mango tree is flowering in December. But does the word make that world? Now, Rabindranath Tagore took the position that the word makes the world. And he argued with Albert Einstein, who said, no, the world is independent of the word. So, this is a debate that remains. What is the relationship between the word and the world? Now, it's complex, I don't want to get into that, but I can definitely say that the word gives us an appreciation, a representation of the world. The world may be there, we don't know. Without language, we don't know. Is the beautiful rings of Saturn. I mean, when you see a picture of the beautiful rings of Saturn, you see blue, you see shades of blue, you see white. This is put by computer. This is put by the human mind. So language gives us words through which we see the world. For example, we perceive shape, round, square, thin, short, through words. We perceive color, red, green, blue, yellow, through words. We perceive movement, fast, slow, hesitant, decisive, through words. I mean, if we didn't have these words, would something still be square? I don't know. Or round? We perceive aesthetics, beautiful, awesome, grand, through words. We know reality, especially social reality. But natural reality is a little more complex, but especially social reality. caste, class, gender, relationships, violence, ahimsa, through words. Just go back for a minute and think of Kalidas's great poem, Meghdut. Everybody knows Meghdut, where an exiled Yaksha, exiled by Kuber, in a place called in the Ramgiri mountains, sees a cloud forming, and he talks to the cloud. He says, "Take my words to my beloved in a place called Alekha, and tell her how much I miss her." Clouds are now the carriers of words, and Kalidas's poem is one of the greatest such descriptions of the lands that the cloud will pass by before it reaches Alekha, from Ramgiri to Alekha. Imagine a cloud carrying words. So my argument here is not to talk about the power of words. That argument has been won. Writers and literatures from classical times to today, Rabindra Bab included, have written great things. So we know about the power of words. My job here, or my aim here, is to show how words create regimes of control and determine how we will see the world which they want us to see. By inhabiting a word, by occupying a word, regimes control the way in which we will see the world. So we occupy the world, and because I'll give you examples. So this may sound abstract, that how can you occupy a word? By occupying a word, we will cause people to see the world in the way we have occupied it. It is censorship not by coercion, but by linguistic domination. So therefore the struggle is against the regime's control of words, and thereby of the perception that they have produced. We therefore need to produce an alternative occupation of the same word. We need to give the word a different meaning. Words can carry multiple meanings. As linguistics philosophers will tell you, the word has multiple meanings. The regime's meaning needs to be countered and displaced. One of the greatest practitioners of giving words meaning is Bapuji, Gandhiji. Just take 5 words that are so central to our freedom struggle. That's why speaking here in the house of Rabindra Bab is such an honor. Take 5 words that Bapuji put into the public domain: Swaraj, Swadeshi, trusteeship. Incidentally, Rabindra Bab wrote an entire booklet of Gandhi's on trusteeship. Gandhi was not a systematic thinker, but he had positions. So from all his collected works, Rabindra Bab found Gandhi's statements on trusteeship and has published it in a small book. So Swaraj, Swadeshi, trusteeship, Sarvodaya and Satyagraha. Swaraj and Swadeshi were already part of our public discourse. But through Gandhi, they acquired new meanings. Swaraj was Tilak's, Swaraj is my birthright. By that he meant self-rule. Gandhiji gave to the word the additional meaning, not just self-rule, but rule over the self. So from Hindu Swaraj, it became Yogic Swaraj, rule over the self. Nowhere in Western intellectual discourse will these two meanings appear in the discussion of freedom. Or take, for example, Swadeshi. Right? He introduced the charkha as central to the Swadeshi activity. He wanted, so Swadeshi became more than just self-production. It became bread labor, it became self-reliance, it became the security of the household. So many new meanings were added to the word. Gandhi took the concept of trust from English law, from Snell's law of trust. He took the concept of trust from law and he put it into ethics, into good behavior. Every capitalist was told, you are no longer an owner, you are now a trustee. You have to, and who is a trustee? One who controls the property on behalf of God. So it's not just for the people, it is for God. Only a part belongs to you, the rest belongs to God. Trusteeship was Gandhi's answer to the violence inherent in both capitalism and socialism. Now, so these 3 words, Swadeshi, Swaraj, trusteeship are Gandhi's attempt to give new meanings to old words. But Gandhi didn't only do that, he also created new words. Sarvodaya, Satyagraha are words that Bapuji.
Please try again.
Are words that Bapuji bequeathed to the political lexicon of the freedom struggle. I hope we in Priol can do the same. So a struggle for words is the struggle that we must all begin and attempt to do. We need to occupy these keywords because we have to give them meanings that work for us, like Gandhiji did. We need to deploy them in the service of the weak. We need to deploy them against the oppressor who wants to control the words, impose their readings on the word, and thereby control the public discourse. Now, the strongest place where this takes place is in the academy, in the universities, where we belong. I have a long section on that, but I don't think I have, I would like to spend time on that because it will take me into a direction. I've got a whole section is written down and I will give it to Zag and they can put it online. There are two regimes of controlling words that I have discussed in this paper. One is controlling words and concepts in the academic world. So the way the academic world does its work, whether it is reading books, whether it is accepting the framing of a question, whether it's adopting a vocabulary, whether it is praising thinkers. For example, we praise John Stuart Mill. We don't praise Ram Mohan Roy. Ram Mohan Roy, 50 years before John Stuart Mill wrote his book on subjection of women, was fighting for sati, abolition of sati, and abolition of and child remarriage, and widow remarriage. Ram Mohan Roy led a campaign for these social reforms before John Stuart Mill was making his argument against the subjection of women. For example, in the academy, we don't adequately teach the Mahabharata as an epic, but we are engaged with the Ulysses as an epic. So, the academy has a way of controlling the debate on behalf of the Western Academy. And I'm not saying that the Western Academy has given us a fantastic resource, but like Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore and like K.C. Bhattacharya, the philosopher, we have to critically engage with them. We have to engage with them by taking their words and saying, no, this will work, this is not working, this is working inadequately. Unfortunately, the crude decolonization people who run the country at the moment don't do this. They reject the Western Academy. They don't understand it. So they will remove Abide With Me from the 29th January retreat because it was a Western. But it's Bapuji's favorite hymn. And Bapuji was not Bapuji was more desi than any of you could ever be. But no, remove this. Isko hatao. Critically engage with the Western legacy is what Rabindranath Tagore has argued, what K.C. Bhattacharya has argued. I don't want to go into this because it's a bit technical, but we have attempted to critically engage with the Western Academy by looking at the Indian language universe and finding words that should be placed in our academic discourse. This is the book that a colleague of mine and I published called Keywords for India. 250 words, 150 authors and academics from all disciplines, linguistics, historians, political scientists, sociologists, anthropologists, lawyers, came together and wrote little definitions of words, which I will now give to the library, to Ravindra Bab's. I'll give you an example of the words which you will find in that book. This book was published in 1920 and soon after COVID struck. So unfortunately the book, we couldn't have a discussion across the country. So after 1 year, a book loses its visibility because a new set of books come out. We have organized 250 words along 7 clusters. So words such as Leela, Dharma, Ahimsa, Asmita, Guru, Maya, Manuvati, Yoga, Dharma, high-level words are there in the book, right? Hopefully, people like us who do social sciences will bring these words into a discussion every day, like we've done with the rain. so we can do with philosophy. But we only haven't taken high-level words. We've also taken everyday words. Words such as Juggi Jhopadi, Bhaichara, Parivar, Lal Batti. Lal Batti now nobody remembers, but Lal Batti was a very big thing to describe the state. People used to fight for Lal Battis. Right? I think people in Goa still use Lal Battis, which they shouldn't be using. But
only government officials.
Government officials are not supposed to use. See the Supreme Court judgment. Sarkar, Dowry, Matlabi, and Jugad. These words are also there in our collection. Even acronyms are there. RTI. You go to England and say RTI. Every Indian will understand. No English speaker will understand. UPSC. Everyone in India knows UPSC. UPSC is an acronym, but it's now become a word. Noida. Become a word. It's an acronym. No something. Take the word Sarkar. The English translation would be government. But in India, when you say Ji Sarkar, you are not saying yes government, you're saying you're showing respect, you're showing recognition of authority. Ji Sarkar. So Sarkar is more than most government. Or take the word Matlabi. Matlabi it's more than cunning. When you say somebody is Matlabi, you also envy. The fellow is getting ahead because of Matlabi hai. We have also in this collection the word file. Now nobody outside India will understand the importance of the word file. Yet it's such an important way to understand our public life. File ache noting kitne sa. Without the file, nothing is possible. But file is such an important idea to describe our social and political life. We also have words like Godrej Almira.
Yes.
Everybody knows Godrej Almira. It means wedding, it means dowry, it means security, it means it will not rust, it will always be there. Lock, Godrej Almira. And we have words like VVIP. Now, VVIP is a very Indian word. Who is a VVIP? People who sit on the first row, behind them must sit VIPs. A VVIP stands in a certain way, walks in a certain way, eats in a certain way, talks to people in a certain way. There are no VVIPs in this room, fortunately. Only VIPs. But in case you think we've left out Goa, that's not true. Asavari and Alito Sikera have contributed the word Sushegad. So the word Sushegad is there. Sushegad said as Konkani, Shushegad, not Susegad. Right? In this book, we have adopted 4 strategies to make these 250 words part of the social science discourse. Strategy of infiltration, put our words into the language of social sciences. So words like ahimsa, karma and dharma have already entered the English. Now people talk of karmic justice in America. Karmic justice. Okay. Words such as settled. What a lovely word. Is your daughter settled? You ask a Frenchman, is your daughter settled? Say, yeah, they got a job. But in India, settled means something else. We have tension. Now, tension is an English word, right? But every Indian language has the word tension. Taxi driver will tell you, sir, tension mat le lo, pahunch jayenge. If they tell you this in Muzaffarnagar, they'll tell you this in Kerala. Tension. In Muzaffarnagar, they may say tension. But if you go to Tamil Nadu, they will understand the word tension. So we have all these words, and we have tried to bring them. But the substance of the thrust of my talk is really the second platform of control. I've given you how we are trying to subvert the academic discourse by introducing 250 words from the Indian language. I've given you a small example of these words into the social science discourse, and hopefully they will be adopted. More people will say, for example, jugad. Now we say modus vivendi. We use a Latin word to say that, okay, temporary adjustment. But jugad is also temporary adjustment. Will we use jugad instead of modus vivendi? Or ceteris paribus. Lawyers will say ceteris paribus, all things being equal. Look for words which people will understand. But homage to Madhavi and Ravindra Bab, I really want to also draw our attention to the control by regimes of the public discourse. What I've just been talking about is control of the academic discourse by scholars in the north of the global south, by scholars of the west and the global south. It's not time for me to get up and finish now. Okay. So what I briefly discussed is a framework of ideas of how the global north controls the global south. And that's true. Whenever we want to describe Indian reality, we use conceptual language coming to us from the West, which is necessary, but it must be critically done, as Rabindranath Tagore and K.C. Bhattacharya have advised us. But today in India, a control of the Indian public discourse, forget about the academic discourse, the Indian public discourse is by the regime. The regime, through its WhatsApp groups, through its, some would say, Godi media, controls the way we talk about the world.